Have you ever heard the skeptics say, oh, astrology isn't real because when we gave a bunch of people the same horoscope, they all thought it was about them? Or they dismiss astrology entirely, claiming it's so vague that it could apply to anyone. This argument has become one of the most common talking points for skeptics, but it misses the mark in so many ways. While it may sound logical on the surface, these so-called experiments are actually riddled with flaws. They not only fail to disprove astrology, but inadvertently reveal just how little skeptics understand about what astrology truly is. Astrology isn't about cookie-cutter horoscopes or generic statements. It's a highly nuanced system that takes into account the complexity of an individual's birth chart, planetary placements, and their unique interactions. Today, we're diving deep into the flaws in these experiments, breaking down why they don't hold up, and shedding light on the incredible depth of astrology that skeptics often overlook or misunderstand. By the end of this, you'll see why these claims against astrology do more to discredit the skeptic's approach than astrology itself. Here's one critical point skeptics overlook. We all have 12 zodiac signs in our birth chart. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of astrology, and it's key to why those so-called experiments fail to disprove it. Astrology doesn't operate in a binary way, where you're only influenced by your sun sign or a handful of prominent planets. Every zodiac sign represents a type of energy or a particular way of navigating life, and those energies are present in everyone's chart, whether through planets, houses, or aspects. For example, even if someone doesn't have planets in Capricorn, they still have a house in their chart ruled by Capricorn, and that house governs a specific area of life. Let's say Capricorn rules their sixth house, which is associated with daily work, health, and routines. Even if they don't have any planets in Capricorn, the qualities of Capricorn, like discipline, responsibility, and long-term planning, may subtly manifest in how they approach their work or health habits. This is a critical nuance skeptics ignore, and that's why someone without a sun, moon, or ascendant in Capricorn could still identify with Capricorn descriptions under the right context. Now let's break it down even further. When skeptics hand people a generic description of Capricorn and claim that everyone resonates with it, they fail to account for the fact that Capricorn energy exists universally in astrology. It's not about whether someone is a Capricorn or not, it's about how Capricorn's themes are expressed in their life. For some, it may manifest strongly through their career if Capricorn rules their 10th house. For others, it may influence their social life if it rules their 11th house. Even subtle placements like the position of Saturn, which is Capricorn's ruling planet, can contribute to how someone connects to Capricorn energy. So, when skeptics claim that everyone resonates with a description, they miss the point entirely. It's not that astrology is vague, it's that we all carry traces of every sign to varying degrees. The key difference lies in where and how those energies show up in our lives. This level of nuance makes astrology deeply personal and precise, something skeptics often fail to grasp when they reduce it to broad generalizations. When skeptics argue that astrology is just a collection of vague statements that could apply to anyone, they're making a similar mistake to someone reading about mental illness symptoms and misdiagnosing themselves. For instance, when you look at a list of symptoms for, say, depression, such as fatigue, difficulty concentrating, or feeling sad, it's not uncommon for someone to say, hey, that sounds like me. But the truth is, those are also experiences that every human goes through at some point. Feeling down or mentally foggy after a bad day or during a stressful period doesn't mean you have clinical depression. It means you're human. What distinguishes an actual mental illness is the severity, duration, and context of those symptoms. It's about degree and persistence, not just whether you've ever felt those things before. The same principle applies to astrology. Just because you relate to certain traits described in a zodiac sign doesn't mean astrology is vague or meaningless. It means those traits exist in the human experience. And astrology, like psychology, provides a framework for understanding how and why they manifest differently for each person. So let's break it down even further. Skeptics' experiments often provide a description of a zodiac sign that claim, see, everyone relates to this, so astrology isn't real. But just like the symptoms of a mental illness, the degree and context matter. For example, you might read that Aries is bold, assertive, and thrives on instant gratification. If you're not an Aries, you might think, I'm like that sometimes. But do you live those traits daily? Do they define your core personality and drive your decision-making? That is where the distinction distinction lies. Astrology doesn't claim that boldness or assertiveness are exclusive to Aries. However, in someone with Aries sun or strong Aries placements, these traits are a driving force, not an occasional occurrence. Astrology provides the context for understanding why and how certain energies are dominant in some people's lives and not in others. Skeptics' oversimplifications fail to account for this nuance. They assume that because a single description resonates with multiple people, astrology must be invalid. But this argument ignores the complexity of human behavior and experience. Just like anyone can have moments of sadness or difficulty concentrating without being depressed, anyone can exhibit traits like boldness or sensitivity without those traits defining their core self. Astrology isn't about saying everyone fits into one mold. It's about showing how the same energies influence people in vastly different ways depending on their unique chart. By failing to understand this, skeptics end up disproving nothing except their own limited grasp of astrology's depth. They often make the mistake of reducing astrology to a simplistic focus on sun signs, failing to recognize that astrology is an intricate system where every sign, house, and planet contributes to the full picture. For instance, if I don't have planets in Libra, skeptics might argue that Libra energy wouldn't apply to me at all. But this overlooks the essential fact that Libra still rules a house in my natal chart. In my particular case, the 5th house, which governs creativity, self-expression, pleasure, and how I experience joy. This means that while Libra isn't a dominant force in my personality, its energy still subtly shapes the way I approach those aspects of my life. So, for example, I might experience creativity with a Libra touch, seeking balance, harmony, or aesthetics in my artistic endeavors, or find that I enjoy collaborative, relationship-oriented forms of self-expression. So this nuance is precisely where skeptics miss the mark. They assume that if someone doesn't have planets in a sign, that sign holds no relevance to their life, as if it simply doesn't exist in their chart. But astrology is about interplay and influence. Every house is ruled by a sign, and even signs without planetary placements exert influence in those life areas. When skeptics dismiss this complexity, they perpetuate the misconception that astrology is a shallow framework focused only on vague sun sign stereotypes. In reality, the richness of astrology lies in how the energies of all 12 signs interact across an individual's entire chart, revealing how various facets of their life are influenced, even subtly, by these archetypes. Now, another flaw in these so-called experiments is that skeptics completely overlook the natural overlap of traits among zodiac signs, particularly those that belong to the same element. So, for instance, all fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, are known for their boldness, passion, and drive. However, these qualities manifest in distinctly different ways depending on their sign. Aries embodies boldness through initiative and fearlessness, often jumping into new ventures headfirst without hesitation. On the other hand, Leo's boldness is tied to its self-confidence and desire for recognition, shining brightly as a natural leader or performer. Sagittarius expresses boldness through its adventurous spirit and willingness to explore new horizons, whether through travel, education, or philosophical pursuits. While the core energy of boldness is shared, motivations and manifestations vary significantly between these fire signs. The same principle applies to water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, all of which share emotional depth but channel it differently. Cancer's emotional depth is rooted in nurturing and creating a sense of security for themselves and their loved ones, often expressing care through acts of service or emotional support. Scorpio, however, dives into emotional depth with intensity, exploring themes of transformation, power, and loyalty, often navigating darker and more hidden emotional terrain. Pisces brings emotional depth through empathy and a deep connection to the collective, often expressing their emotions artistically or spiritually. While skeptics might dismiss these variations as unimportant, they're crucial to understanding astrology. For example, if you give a Pisces a generalized description of Scorpio's emotional intensity, they might resonate with it to some degree because they share water's emotional nature. However, that doesn't mean the description is a perfect fit. These overlaps can lead skeptics to mistakenly conclude that astrology is vague or universal when in fact it's simply nuance. Without understanding the subtle differences in how these traits are expressed, they assume that a description meant for one sign could apply to anyone, which oversimplifies the system. What skeptics fail to grasp is that the nuances in these overlapping traits are precisely what makes astrology accurate and specific. A proper reading of a chart acknowledges these shared elements while diving deeper into the individual ways they're expressed based on the full natal chart. They also fail to consider the profound influence of other key placements in the astrological chart, such as the moon, Mars, or other planets. For example, someone with moon in Aries and sun in Leo might strongly resonate with Aries traits, not because their sun sign is Aries, but because the moon governs their emotional responses, instincts, and inner world. The moon represents how we process emotions and find security, and if it's in Aries, that person may exhibit Aries-like emotional traits, quick reactions, a need for independence, and a fiery passion when expressing their feelings. These traits may overshadow their Leo sun in certain contexts, especially in situations involving emotional dynamics. The same logic applies to other planetary placements. For instance, Mars governs action, drive, and how we assert ourselves. A person with Mars in Aries might exhibit bold, straightforward, and determined behaviors when pursuing goals, even if their sun sign is a more reserved or introspective sign like Pisces. These placements add layers of complexity to an individual's personality that go far beyond the generalized traits of their sun sign. Now, the experiments skeptics refer to typically assume that people only resonate with their sun sign traits, completely ignoring the multidimensional nature of an astrological chart. The sun sign represents core identity and purpose, but it doesn't exist in isolation. Every planet in the natal chart plays a role, influencing different facets of a person's life and behavior. This is why someone with no Aries sun might still identify strongly with Aries traits if other placements, such as the moon, Mars, or the ascendant, are in Aries or interact strongly with Aries energy. By overlooking these nuances, skeptics fundamentally misunderstand astrology and its intricacies. The resonance people feel with certain signs or traits isn't random. It's reflective of the layered, interconnected dynamics of their chart. Astrology isn't just about identifying with one sign. It's about understanding how the entire chart weaves together to create a complex, unique individual. Here's where it gets even murkier. Skeptics conducting these so-called experiments never seem to provide clear, detailed information about how they were carried out, leaving us to question their scientific validity. How many people were involved in these tests? Were there 5 participants? 50? 100? This matters because sample size significantly impacts the reliability of any experiment, especially one that aims to generalize results about something as nuanced as astrology. A small sample size wouldn't represent the vast diversity of natal charts, while a larger one might include such a range of placements that the experiment loses focus. Now, what is more important, we're never told anything about the participants' natal charts. Did they all share the same sun sign? If so, did they also have similar placements for the moon, Mercury, or Venus? These planets govern critical aspects of personality like emotions, communication styles, and relationships, and they can significantly alter how a person experiences the traits of their sun sign. For instance, 2 people with Leo sun may feel and express themselves very differently if one has Pisces moon, that is emotional and empathetic, and the other one has Aries moon, which is bold and direct. If these differences aren't accounted for, the experiment is meaningless. And what about participants with entirely different sun signs? Did experiments lump together people with Sagittarius suns and Taurus suns and then hand them all the same horoscope or description? If so, that's another glaring issue. Astrology acknowledges shared traits between certain signs. For example, fire signs like Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius share boldness and enthusiasm, but they express these traits differently. If a Sagittarius resonated with an Aries description, it wouldn't be surprising because they're both fire signs, but this would hardly disprove astrology. It would simply highlight the interconnectedness of similar energies. Now, if we go further with this, skeptics don't seem to consider the role of dominant planets or aspects in a chart. A participant with no Aries sun but a prominent Mars in Aries might strongly resonate with Aries-like descriptions, as Mars governs action, ambition, and how we assert ourselves. Did these experiments account for such dynamics? It's doubtful. The complexity of astrology requires acknowledging every chart's unique composition, and without such detail, any claim that everyone resonated with the same description becomes deeply flawed. Another major question is whether participants were grouped by specific criteria, such as similar planetary placements, or whether they were randomly selected. Random selection in this context would ignore key astrological factors, like whether someone had a strong Saturn influence, which creates a cautious personality, or a Jupiter-dominant chart, which indicates optimism and boldness. Did experiments compare people with similar charts or wildly different ones? We don't know because the information is never disclosed. Finally, the descriptions themselves are rarely, if ever, revealed. So were these descriptions ambiguous, generic, and intentionally vague? If they were, then of course participants might resonate with them. It's like reading symptoms of common human experiences, such as you enjoy stability but also crave adventure, which could apply to anyone. But astrology isn't about vague descriptions. It's about interpreting specific planetary placements and their interactions. Without transparency about the process, these experiments prove nothing except their own lack of understanding. True science is built on transparency, repeatability, and detailed methodologies. When a hypothesis is tested scientifically, every aspect of the process, from the sample selection to the criteria for measurement, is meticulously documented. Astrology, when approached with the same level of precision, stands out as incredibly detailed and nuanced. A properly constructed natal chart considers not only the sun sign, but the placement of every planet, the aspects they form, and how these factors interact to create a unique individual profile. Without considering these intricacies, any attempt to evaluate astrology is inherently flawed. If skeptics genuinely want to disprove astrology, their experiments must align with the standards of scientific rigor. This means designing tests that examine entire natal charts, not just vague, oversimplified sun sign descriptions that barely scratch the surface of astrology's depth. A comprehensive approach would involve selecting participants based on specific chart similarities or differences, crafting detailed interpretations of their placements, and analyzing whether individuals resonate with the complexity of their own charts. Such a study would not only be more credible, but would also demonstrate a genuine attempt to understand astrology rather than dismissing it out of hand. When skeptics focus solely on sun signs, they're not disproving astrology. They're revealing their own shallow and oversimplified understanding of it. Astrology is not about broad generalizations or one-size-fits-all descriptions. It's about the intricate interplay of energies that shape each person's experiences and personality. By failing to address this complexity, skeptics undermine their own arguments and miss an opportunity to engage with astrology in a meaningful, intellectual way. So the next time someone tells you astrology is fake because everyone resonates with every sign, remember this: skeptics aren't debunking astrology, they're debunking their misunderstanding of it. Real astrology isn't about vague generalizations, it's a precise, individualized map of who you are, your challenges, and your strengths. So if you're curious about the depth and accuracy of astrology, especially in areas like criminal profiling and behavior, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I dive deep into how natal charts connect to personality and life events. So let's uncover the real mysteries of astrology together.